Hey everyone, get ready, because today we're diving deep into the war that changed the world forever. World War I, the Great War, where it all began. In just 30 minutes, we'll journey through the pivotal events, from the unexpected spark to the end that ushered in a new era. If you're ready, let's jump right in. It all started on June 28, 1914, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a member of a Serbian nationalist group. This event ignited a chain reaction that dragged the major powers of Europe into conflict. Imagine Europe in 1914, a powder keg of simmering tensions. Secret alliances crisscrossed the continent like a spiderweb, and the air crackled with imperial ambitions. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, it was like a match thrown into dry tinder. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, issued an impossible ultimatum to Serbia. Russia stood by Serbia, and suddenly the dominoes began to fall. One nation after another was dragged into the abyss of war. But hold on, it was much more complex than that. These tensions had been brewing for years. For decades, the great powers of Europe had been competing for colonies, power, and influence. Nationalism was on the rise, especially among oppressed ethnic groups within large empires like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. A complex web of alliances entangled the nations, with each pledging to defend the other if attacked. When the assassination occurred, it was the spark that lit the fuse. Austria-Hungary received a blank check of support from Germany, meaning Germany would back them no matter what. They wanted to assert their dominance and crush the nationalist movement in Serbia. But Russia, with its ethnic and religious ties to Serbia, couldn't stand idly by. As Russia mobilized for war, Germany declared war on Russia and France, Russia's ally. Great Britain, initially trying to remain neutral, decided to join the war after Germany violated Belgium's neutrality. World War I wasn't merely the result of international conflicts, but also the failure of leaders to address the complex problems of the era. It was a war that no one wanted, but everyone was prepared to fight. In August 1914, Europe plunged headlong into war. Germany invaded neutral Belgium to attack France following the infamous Schlieffen Plan. This plan aimed to quickly defeat France and then turn its attention to Russia. But the plan faced fierce resistance. The Western Front became a nightmarish landscape of mud, blood, and barbed wire. Trenches stretched for hundreds of miles, from the English Channel to Switzerland. Imagine soldiers living in those conditions. The constant stench of decay, the gnawing fear of artillery fire, the swarms of rats, and the ever-present threat of disease. Battles like the Marne, Verdun, and the Somme became synonymous with carnage, claiming millions of lives for mere yards of ground. The Schlieffen Plan was incredibly ambitious, aiming to defeat the French army in just 6 weeks. However, the valiant resistance of Belgium and the swift response of France and Britain stalled the plan. The German army advanced to the outskirts of Paris, but was stopped at the First Battle of the Marne in September 1914. This battle marked a turning point, ending Germany's hopes of a quick victory and leading to the development of trench warfare. Trench warfare was a brutal and dehumanizing form of combat. Soldiers dug complex networks of trenches, sometimes several layers deep, stretching for miles. These trenches became the soldiers' homes for months on end, where they endured appalling conditions: mud, dampness, rats, and disease. During battles, soldiers had to go over the top into no man's land, the area between the opposing trenches, and face machine gun fire, artillery bombardment, and poison gas. Poison gas was a terrifying new weapon, used for the first time in World War I. Gases like chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gas caused agonizing symptoms, such as blistering, suffocation, and blindness. Gas attacks instilled widespread fear and psychological trauma and remain a symbol of the era's industrial-scale barbarity. The major battles on the Western Front were incredibly bloody and futile. In the Battle of Verdun, which lasted almost the entire year of 1916, French and German forces fought relentlessly, resulting in nearly 1 million casualties with little territorial gain. The Battle of the Somme in the same year was even more horrific, with over 1 million casualties and the single bloodiest day in British military history. These battles exemplified the senselessness of trench warfare, where soldiers were sent to their deaths in massive numbers for minimal progress. While the Western Front was the bloodiest, World War I wasn't confined to just there. The Eastern Front saw massive battles between Germany, Russia, and Austria-Hungary, with vast distances and harsh winter conditions playing a major role. Italy joined the Allied side in 1915, hoping to gain territory from Austria-Hungary. The war also raged far beyond Europe. In the Middle East, a charismatic British officer named T.E. Lawrence, the Lawrence of Arabia, rallied Arab tribes against the Ottoman Empire, which had allied itself with the Central Powers. Imagine him leading daring raids across the desert, a key figure in a conflict that reshaped the map of the Middle East. World War I truly became a global conflict. The Eastern Front was very different from the Western Front. Here, armies moved across vast territories, leading to more fluid battles and rapid changes in territory. The Russian army initially had success against the Austro-Hungarian forces, but suffered major defeats against the more efficient German army. The harsh Russian winter made warfare even more difficult, with soldiers enduring freezing temperatures, snow, and blizzards. Italy joined the Allied side in 1915, hoping to gain territories known as unredeemed lands from Austria-Hungary. However, the Italian front became another bloody stalemate, with fierce fighting in the Alps. Italian and Austro-Hungarian forces battled in the rugged mountainous terrain, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. In the Middle East, World War I led to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled much of the region for centuries. T.E. Lawrence, a British officer, played a key role in inciting the Arab revolt against Ottoman rule. Lawrence worked with Arab leaders like Faisal Iber to organize forces and launch guerrilla attacks against the Ottoman army. The Arab revolt weakened the Ottoman Empire and paved the way for the creation of new nation-states in the region after the war. World War I also saw fighting in Africa and Asia, where European powers' colonies became battlegrounds. Japanese forces seized German colonies in China and the Pacific, while British and French forces attacked German colonies in Africa. World War I was not just a European war, but a global conflict involving people and territories from around the world. The naval war was also significant, with Germany using U-boats to blockade shipping to Great Britain. This led to events like the sinking of the Lusitania, which killed many Americans and outraged American public opinion. Initially, the United States maintained a policy of neutrality. However, several factors, including Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare and the Zimmermann Telegram, in which Germany proposed an alliance with Mexico against the United States, led the U.S. to declare war on Germany in April 1917. The entry of the United States was a major turning point, as it brought vast numbers of fresh troops and resources to the Allied side. The naval war in World War I was primarily a struggle between the two most powerful navies in the world, the British Royal Navy and the Imperial German Navy. The British Royal Navy was much larger and more powerful, but the German Navy was a modern and efficient force, particularly in submarine warfare. Germany used U-boats to try to blockade Great Britain, hoping to starve the island nation into submission. U-boats were very successful in sinking British merchant ships, causing shortages of supplies and damaging the British economy. However, Germany's policy of unrestricted submarine warfare caused controversy and condemnation from other nations, particularly when U-boats sank the passenger liner Lusitania in 1915, killing 128 Americans. The sinking of the Lusitania became a turning point in American public opinion. Imagine the outrage when news spread that a German U-boat had torpedoed a passenger liner, killing 128 Americans. As one newspaper declared, it was an act of barbarism. President Woodrow Wilson initially tried to maintain neutrality, but the Lusitania and Germany's continued submarine warfare pushed the U.S. closer to war. Another key factor leading to U.S. entry into the war was the Zimmermann telegram. In 1917, a German official sent a secret telegram to Mexico, proposing a military alliance against the United States if the U.S. entered the war. The telegram was intercepted by British intelligence and passed on to the U.S. government. The revelation of the Zimmermann telegram caused widespread anger in the United States and fueled anti-German sentiment. In April 1917, after considerable delay and debate, the United States declared war on Germany. The entry of the United States was a major turning point in the war, as it brought vast numbers of fresh troops, resources, and supplies to the Allied side. The U.S. Navy helped to escort convoys of supply ships across the Atlantic, while the U.S. Army began training and deploying soldiers to the Western Front. In 1917, two major events shifted the course of the war. In Russia, the February Revolution overthrew the Tsar and led to the rise of Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks. Russia withdrew from the war, allowing Germany to focus its attention on the Western Front. In the spring of 1918, Germany launched a major offensive, hoping to win the war before American reinforcements arrived in full force. However, the offensive failed, and the Allies launched a massive counteroffensive that pushed the German army back. This counteroffensive, led by French Marshal Ferdinand Foch, demonstrated the Allies' superiority in both manpower and equipment. In 1917, Russia, once a great power, was engulfed in political turmoil and revolution. The February Revolution overthrew the autocratic rule of Tsar Nicholas II and led to the establishment of a provisional government. However, the provisional government was unable to address the pressing problems facing the country, such as food shortages, inflation, and the ongoing war. In October 1917, the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin, overthrew the provisional government and established a new communist regime. The Bolsheviks promised to end the war, distribute land to the peasants, and give control of the factories to the workers. In March 1918, the Bolshevik government signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, formally ending Russia's involvement in the war. The treaty resulted in significant territorial losses for Russia, but the Bolsheviks believed it was necessary to secure their new regime. Russia's withdrawal from the war was a major turning point, as it allowed Germany to transfer large numbers of troops from the Eastern Front to the Western Front. Hoping to capitalize on their newfound advantage, the Germans launched the Spring Offensive in 1918. This offensive was a last-ditch effort to win the war before the full weight of American forces could be brought to bear. The German army initially made significant gains, pushing deep into Allied territory, but they faced fierce resistance and ultimately stalled. The Allies, now bolstered by large numbers of American troops, launched a major counteroffensive in the summer of 1918. This counteroffensive, led by French Marshal Ferdinand Foch, was highly successful, pushing the German army back and recapturing lost territory. The Allies had a significant advantage in terms of manpower, equipment, and air support. The German army, exhausted and demoralized after years of fighting, was unable to withstand the Allied advance. On November 11, 1918, Germany signed the armistice, officially ending World War I. The Allies were victorious, but the victory came at a tremendous cost. The war had claimed millions of lives, left Europe in ruins, and forever altered the political landscape of the world. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed harsh peace terms on Germany. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for the war, pay massive reparations, and cede large amounts of territory. The treaty caused widespread resentment and bitterness in Germany, which contributed to the rise of World War II.